What's good people? I had a terrible driving experience this morning. It felt like everyone just had an extra cup of Cuban coffee today. Very erratic driving. But that inspired me to develop a list of tips to keep in mind when driving in Miami. This can pertain to Palm Beach and Broward counties, but it's mostly for Miami-Dade counties because that's where the driving is the worst. Don't believe me? Check it out. Miami is in the top 5 nationwide on multiple lists for cities with the most expensive car insurance. And that's because a lot of people here drive into and onto things that aren't meant to be driven into, like other people's cars or people's fences for some reason. The traffic alone is enough of a headache, and bad driving makes it that much worse. So I hope that this list gives at least one driver, just one driver, some insight on some things to take into consideration when driving in Miami. So here's my list of top tips for driving in Miami. Let's get started. Tip number 1, pay attention. I know, big surprise, right? Pay attention while driving, but it makes a big difference. Not just the obvious applications of no texting and driving or no drinking and driving, but also Miami is just full of sign congestion, sign pollution, if you will. And it's easy to miss the sign for your next exit and then try to make an emergency lane change last minute, and that's how accidents happen. So be mindful that construction makes road signs even more difficult to see, and Waze and Google Maps don't always know that the road patterns have changed. So slow down if you must, but pay close attention to the road and the road signs. Also, some really awful drivers will try to brake check you because scams are rampant here in Miami. Pay attention to that too. In addition to the brake checkers, you have what I call tip number 2, zoomies, aka wannabe Formula One drivers. I admit, I don't like the slow drivers on the highway. When I say slow, I mean like 15 miles per hour under the speed limit. They are a big culprit for causing the awful traffic here, especially when they occupy the fast lane, but they're pretty easy to get around. The far worse menaces are the zoomies. These terrors are the speed demons that are always in a rush somewhere, but have very little care for others on the road. I'm talking about people like this. Just blowing by at least 80 to 90 miles per hour with very little margin for error. I-95 is already narrow, and if this guy clips any of us, then the whole day is ruined. Bro, you're not Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen. Go use all that horsepower out west in the Everglades somewhere, or on an actual track. I'm all for fun, fast toys, but not when we're all making our way downtown, trying to go to work and make a living for our families, okay? I-95 is not a drag strip. And this is a relatively rare case of a BMW Zoomie, but typical suspects are Dodge Chargers and Challengers, Kia K5s and Optimas and their cousins, the Hyundai Sonatas, Chevy Malibus and Impalas, but the biggest culprits of them all are Nissan Altimas, Maximas, and those Infiniti Q50s, which are a more luxurious Altima, if there is such a thing. I'll make a video one day about Altimas because the disdain that I have for them is immense. Back to the list. Tip number 3. Avoid peak travel times if possible. I get it. If you're working the 9 to 5 grind or taking the kids to school or have a can't miss appointment, sometimes you're just going to have to join the herd on the busy Miami roads. However, if you can help it, try to avoid driving during the peak travel times. Congestion in Miami is pretty severe, so peak times are a bit extended than they would be in some other major cities. The absolute worst times to travel are from 7:30 to 9:30 a.m. and from 3:30 p.m. to 7 p.m. Seems excessive, but it wouldn't be Miami if there wasn't excess, right? Traffic should be relatively congestion-free outside those times, apart from any random occurrences like an accident, heavy rain showers, or a big event. Also, try to avoid school zones if possible. 15 miles per hour is painfully slow, but those are the school zone speeds in both Miami-Dade and Broward counties. Also, know the everyday pinch points too, like where the Dolphin Expressway and I-95 intersect, or the Palmetto Expressway in Hialeah. It backs up every afternoon in both directions just for fun. Hey, since you're here and you're already 3 tips in, go ahead and karate chop that like button. I greatly appreciate it. Tip number 4, check the traffic before you leave. This one right here gets a gold star. I cannot tell you how many times I've forgotten to do this and have been jammed up for 15 to 20 minutes. Now it's just a part of my pre-driving ritual. It's just a 15-second glance at the phone that I do for any drive that can normally take around 10 minutes or more. I'm very serious here. I've had simple trips to the hardware store, the grocery store, gas station turn into whole things just because I didn't check the traffic. This ties perfectly into tip number 5, give yourself an extra 15 minutes. Yeah, just do it. Yeah, you might get there a little bit early, but that's not a bad thing, right? Then you can watch all those TikToks parked instead of driving. Even with checking the traffic before getting on the highway, Miami is a very, very dynamic city. Things happen without warning. The bright line hits a car, a man runs out on I-95, rain, a protest closes downtown exit ramps, a plane makes an emergency landing on the highway, more rain, some social media influencers on a yacht make the drawbridge go up again in Brickell. It's a Tuesday. Hey, traffic jams can pop up for just about any reason, rendering even the best made plans suddenly delayed. This is Florida. This stuff really happens. Tip number 6, express lanes are not always. I think the powers that be meant well with the express lanes. Let me know if you want me to make a full express lanes video, because I have a love-hate relationship with them. If you're familiar with the basketball saying, you live by the 3 and you die by the 3, the same is true for the express lanes. When they work fine, save the seemingly arbitrary toll you have to pay in the morning rush. And it's typically always at least $11 for the northbound I-95 express lanes in the afternoon. But when there's an incident in the express lanes in either direction, commute times can easily double. Easily. And there's really no inherently safe way to escape that traffic nightmare, unless being escorted by traffic enforcement. It's incredibly dangerous to try and cross over otherwise. At least if you're in the local lanes, you can escape to the side streets. The express lanes are a toss of the dice every time. Luckily, major express lane stoppages occur maybe once every 25 travels for drivers. Pretty good odds. But my rule is this: express lanes are worth it if the toll is between $3 and $7.50. Anything less than $3 or more than $7.50, and this is on I-95 express lanes, you might as well stick to the local lanes since the travel times will be similar. Tip number 7, traffic lights are the great equalizers. Miami drivers that drive really fast during busy traffic times are funny to me. Funny because I end up seeing them at the next signal anyway. I guess they're just in a hurry to watch IG Reels, or they enjoy burning excess fuel. The mighty traffic signal is undefeated. Part of this is probably Miami-Dade's decision to have traffic lights that have an uncanny sense of when you're in that weird zone. You could stop, but if you were to floor it, you might make it, but your brain is trying to figure out which one you've decided, but then the light's already been on yellow for 1 full second, and then you clearly are not going to make the light anymore because you've failed to commit. I say all that to say that traffic lights are going to stop you regardless, so you might as well get used to them. It's a way of life here. Tip number 8, rain and Miami drivers do not mix. In my other video, Stuff I Wish I Knew Before Moving to Miami, linked below, I talked about how it rains pretty much half the year. But even so, anytime it rains, people act like they've never seen it before. You should drive slower in the rain, but not half the speed, unless it's blinding rain, then I can understand. But just know that common sense goes out the window. Random lane changes, random braking, no wipers, no lights sometimes. Wow, this goes right into tip number 9, use your signal. These magical devices come standard on all car makes and models, except for Nissan Altimas apparently. Even as great as AI and autopilot and similar technologies have gotten, we still can't read other drivers' minds. Your signal communicates that, hey, I like to scoot over one lane, or several, not recommended. It gives the nice Miami drivers a chance to boost their karma levels to let you change lanes. And it gives the not so nice Miami drivers a chance to boost their speed and make life difficult by not allowing you to change lanes. These drivers, next time they do that, see how many dings and scratches they have on their car. There's usually a correlation. Tip number 10, cultural awareness. Miami is a melting pot of people from all over, and now they are here. And in most cases, they have a Florida driver's license. But I mean, parallel parking isn't on the driver's test, and car insurance prices are super high, so maybe we're not the best drivers. Just being honest here. This tip is saying that there's a lot of people in Miami that live here, but they may have driven differently in their native country. So be patient as we all try to figure out this song and dance without stepping on each other's toes. There are also people that are American born and still suck at driving. So just do better, Miami. And Miami tourists. Miami tourists, just because you're vacationing down here doesn't mean that this is GTA 6. Drive with caution, not reckless abandon. And last, here's a bonus tip. Parking in general, as you may already have figured out, is bad. Use other means if possible to get to your locations. Uber and Lyft get the job done, but effective mass transit options in South Florida are limited. If you must drive, keep tip number 4 in line and be prepared to circle the block at least once. Get ready to practice your parallel parking in areas like Wynwood, Brickell, and Miami Beach. Use extreme caution in the parking garages. Be careful of distracted people and those pesky concrete corners. They both can scratch you up pretty bad. Parking will almost always be expensive and almost always at your own risk, but it's a necessary evil. Kind of like Interstate 95. And I don't trust anyone that doesn't have a Miami I-95 story. All real Miamis have at least one. It's a rite of passage. So those are my tips for driving in Miami. I would say that driving here is a lot trickier than in most other big cities just because the margin for error is slim and the drivers are pretty aggressive here. But the upside is that once you get the hang of the rapid pace and how to navigate it, you can drive in just about any other city with ease, at least here in America. For instance, I've been driving in Miami for about 10 years now, and I was able to drive all around New York City, Queens, Brooklyn, and Manhattan without much hassle. Thanks for sticking around until the end. I'd appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel. If you enjoyed the video, let me know if there are any specific videos about getting around Miami or Florida in general that you'd like to see, and maybe I'll put something together. Happy holidays and be safe out there.